Good afternoon. Opening day at Sherman Island. And what a day, what an event, what a turnout. I wanted an edit that captured that feeling of like loading up before boosting something incredible and not knowing how it's going to turn out. So I hope I captured that tension and that feel. Somebody said that kiting is dead, and I don't think these folks got the message because they look like they're having a blast. And I sure had a blast watching them. It was really fun and just incredible, and just seeing, I mean, just the hugeness of the airs and then the gracefulness of being able to land it. It's just very impressive to watch and super fun and exciting. And so I'm glad I get to show it here. And I sure had fun watching. Big thanks to all the supporters for putting this on, and especially the food. It was super delicious and great to have a focal point for everyone to get together and see familiar faces and connect and get all stoked and fired up about what's to come. And I really appreciate if you can like this video and subscribe. And YouTube rolled out a new feature for super thanks. And so if you want to contribute, you can do so that way. Or there's also the option to join. You can contribute that way or head on over to my website. And there's a link to either donate or to become a member. All that helps. And thank you so much. I had a session the other day where the what I love to do, which is surf bumps, didn't quite line up. The wind wasn't really strong enough. The tide wasn't right, and so I was kind of resigned to just mess around and experiment. And I started just doing little things with my jibes, just little variations on the acceleration or how I turn or how I oriented the wing, and it ended up being really fun, and it just got me thinking, like watching these folks. That's kind of how it happens. You just go out, maybe it's flat or the wind isn't quite what you hope, and you start trying stuff, and then next thing you know, you send it like that. And honestly, I think the reason airs and big moves and stuff are so appealing or so attractive is because of the spills, because of the, if every air resulted in a perfect completion and zero risk of getting hurt or pain or injury, then everyone would do it and they'd be no big deal. And that's kind of, my experience back to wakeboarding when I'd send it across the wake and come up feeling like I was concussed or like, never wanting to do it again. Like that made the successes all the more sweeter. That huge risk of it all going wrong really sweetened the joy when it all went right. Often seeing kiting where a kiter will lose their board and they'll be getting dragged downwind or struggling to get back to their board, and another kiter will pick up their board and bring it back to them. And I really love that about kiting. When I lived in Alameda, a board washed up at my house. So I called the local shop and was like, hey, one of your people lost their boards. And they're like, oh, you're such a saint. Can you bring it by the shop? And it felt great to hear that. And even though I'm not a kiter, I felt like I was part of the community. I could contribute and, being a local and in there. So it was rad. And, just kind of, I love that the sport itself has that hardwired into it that most kiters launch each other's kites. And especially the beginners, they don't have the ability to self launch. So it's just like a necessity of being a kiter that you have to help each other. And so that's rad. And I really like how that feels, and a good way to be in the world. Speaking of world, it's opening day. It's a warm, hot weekend. The free parking today. And so it's like, food, everything. It's like everybody in the world seemed like they came out today. And it was the same last year. Like the parking is overflowing. And with the heat and out of the wind, it's easy to get, irritated, get that like feeling of like, man, it's hot. And just like, there's people everywhere and I can't find a place to park. And the launches, got to the point where one of the launches was full of people just enjoying the wind and the water, trying to cool off, and there was no room to launch. And so we had to go to this little side launch, and it was easy to kind of get bummed and be like, it's crowded and there's too many people. But then, it turns out that launch is actually easier. And in a way, they were doing us a favor because you just drop straight into deep water. And with the foil, it made it way easier. And I heard this term years ago from an old school windsurfer. And they referred to kiting as Al Qaeda. It's like a play on words and kind of a put down. And I was like, that's kind of weird. Like, why the animosity? And then on this day, launching in the thick of multi-sport people, and like as a bump rider, I want to go upwind and then downwind, and the windsurfers go straight out and come back across the same track, and the kiters want a big open space where they can launch, and so it's easy to feel like we're stepping on each other's toes sometimes, and to get kind of in that mentality. But then for me, just go a little bit upwind, or watch something incredible like this when we slow it down and see the beauty of like the water spilling off and all these little details that are easy to overlook, or to get caught up in there's too many people, or it's busy, or oh, these guys are boosting near me, it's dangerous, they might land on my head and their kites and their strings. And but it's a huge river, like the footprint, like if you drive over the bridge to get here, like the water is empty. There is not a soul in sight until you get like right on top of the zone here. And so like there's tons of room, even though it doesn't feel like it, but just a little perspective, inverted, if you will. We can, if we want to get away from people, we can, or if the whole our whole jam is like being on top of each other, and getting to show each other our stuff, and stuff like that, we can do that too. There's room, it's so I found myself getting a little irritated at first, but then I just went a mile upwind because like there were no bumps in the zone where the people were anyway. And I went up wind to the second marker, and all of a sudden the swell was way better. There was nobody around. And I was like, oh, this is perfect. It's almost like the universe sent me a message like, hey, just go up there. Like it's crowded here and you're irritated for a reason. Just go a little upwind, and Shangri-La is right there. And one of my other friends said they went 2 miles downwind, and there was nobody down there, and the swell was perfect. And so it's like, just a little change or adjustment if we're not digging what's going on, and there's tons of room. Some spots have their kind of like that's why it's like whoops, and they're like, oh shoot, sorry, bro. And it's like fun to watch and cool to see the expressions on people's faces. And it's water. It's like it's fun to get wet. It's not the end of the world. And so cool. Glad there's fun for everybody, and even if we're not putting the camera people in danger, what fun is that? And but hey, everyone comes home fine, so it's fun. But I was noticing that like some spots have a real bubble where there's a certain way, whether it's maybe this is just a windsurfer spot, or that's kind of people go there, or maybe just kiters, and then like a winger shows up, or somebody different doing something different, and it kind of feels like outsider stepping on, but then just get into it, like we're all doing the same thing, we're all having the same fun, and seeing how many, like the first year of winging, not a whole lot of converts. There were some who are just that's their thing. They're going to try the new thing, and or if they're foilers, they're down with it no matter what. But there's some people kind of hold out all last year. They didn't even try it, and then this year they're like full on. They've paid the dues. They've got the latest gear. They're like fully hooked. And so I wasn't sure coming here, like what would the representation be like of each discipline. And so it was cool to see that kiting is in fact alive and well. And even though the wingers are, especially the young wingers are putting on the shows and doing the crazy tricks and flips and really expanding their game, the kiters that have been at this for years are still the king of huge airs and huge tricks, and no one can boost like they can, at least not yet. Maybe Tituan. We'll see what happens when, like out at Chrissy Field, the Groms out there just like go from like flailing to like Kai Lenny status in like a month, it seems like. So it's like it'll be cool to see where it all goes, and what happens to kiting, or how many people stay with kiting, or does it become like a multi-discipline thing where we're all dabbling, like we get a little taste of the wind sport action, and then we're like, oh, I want to try that, like the huge air, maybe that's where it's at. And so had a blast, super fun. Glad to see everyone. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope this was fun and enjoyable, and hope to see you out there. Yeah, there's room for everyone, so come on out.